The night shift at Harper's Pharmacy. Harper's Pharmacy had been in the small town for as long as anyone could remember. It was one of those places that never seemed to change, with its old-fashioned shelves, dusty corners, and a bell that jingled every time you walked through the door. People liked it that way. It was comforting, familiar, except for the man who ran it, Mr. Harper. Mr. Harper had inherited the pharmacy from his father, just as his father had from his father before him. He was an old man now, with thick glasses, greasy gray hair, and hands that trembled just a little when he measured out pills. He rarely spoke, and when he did, it was always in a low, rasping voice that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up.
Some said he was a genius, a man who had spent his life learning the secrets of medicine. Others whispered that he'd gone mad after his wife had died years ago. Nobody knew the full story, but everyone in town knew that something wasn't right with Mr. Harper.
Even so, people kept coming. There weren't many options for pharmacies in town, and Mr. Harper always had exactly what they needed. Even medicines that other places ran out of, Harper's always had in stock. But recently, rumors had started to spread. Stories about people getting sick after taking their prescriptions from Harper's. Stories about people going missing. Still, no one could prove anything.
Then, one night, Sam, a college student working part-time as a pharmacy assistant, drew the short straw for the night shift. Harper's was open 24 hours, and someone always had to be there, even though no one ever came after dark. Mr. Harper had insisted on keeping the late hours, though no one knew why. Sam didn't like the idea of spending the night alone with Mr. Harper, but he needed the job.
Occasionally, Sam would hear a faint clink of glass or the low hum of machinery, but for the most part, it was quiet, until the bell above the door jingled. It was nearly midnight, and a woman had just walked in. She was pale, her face drawn and tight, her eyes wide as she glanced around nervously. She approached the counter quickly, glancing over her shoulder as if she expected someone to be following her.
I need something for sleep. I haven't slept in days.
Are you okay, ma'am? You look like...
I just need something to make me sleep. Please.
Before Sam could say anything, Mr. Harper appeared from the back room, moving with an unnatural quickness for a man his age. His appearance startled Sam, and the woman flinched as he approached the counter.
You're in the right place. I have just the thing.
Without waiting for a reply, he disappeared into the back. The woman shifted uneasily, wringing her hands.
Are you sure this is a good idea? You don't look well. Maybe you should go to a doctor.
I've seen doctors. They can't help me. No one can except him.
Before Sam could respond, Mr. Harper returned, holding a small, unlabeled bottle filled with a thick green liquid. He placed it on the counter.
Take this tonight. You'll sleep like the dead.
The woman's hand shook as she reached for the bottle. She looked at Mr. Harper for a long moment, her eyes wide and filled with something like terror. Then, without another word, she turned and hurried out of the pharmacy. Sam watched her go, his unease growing.
What was that stuff?
Just something to help us sleep. Don't worry about it.
Sam didn't press the issue, but the rest of the night, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman's terrified expression about the strange green liquid in the bottle. He felt a gnawing sense of dread that he couldn't shake. It was around 2 a.m. when Sam heard it, a faint tapping sound like someone knocking on glass. He looked up from his book, but the pharmacy was empty. The sound came again, louder this time. Sam stood up and walked around the counter, trying to pinpoint the noise. It seemed to be coming from the back room, the place Mr. Harper never let anyone go. Sam hesitated. He knew he shouldn't go back there, but the sound was getting louder, more insistent. His curiosity got the better of him. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The back room was dimly lit, cluttered with old medical equipment and shelves of strange bottles. The air smelled of chemicals and something else, something metallic. And then, there it was again. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from a large glass cabinet in the corner, covered with a heavy cloth. Sam slowly approached, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached for the cloth, hands trembling, and yanked it off. Inside the cabinet was a body, a man, his skin pale and waxy, floating in some kind of thick green liquid. His eyes were open, staring blankly at the ceiling. Sam stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. His stomach turned. The man's face. It was one of the missing people. Sam had seen his face on flyers around town. Sam's mind raced. He needed to get out, needed to call the police. But before he could move, Mr. Harper's hand shot out, grabbing him by the wrist with surprising strength.
Don't worry, Sam. You'll understand soon enough. You'll be my next patient.
As Mr. Harper pulled him toward the cabinet, the last thing Sam heard was the faint tap, tap, tap coming from inside, like the sound of fingers on glass. And Harper's pharmacy was still open the next day, waiting for its next customer.